Why does everything that once held value now seem false? At what point did the standard life stop being enough and start to hurt? What if the discomfort you feel were, in reality, a calling and not a mistake?
Being common is the ambition of those who fail, wrote Carl Jung. And perhaps you are precisely at that point, sick of pretending, of smiling without knowing why, of walking the streets as one who observes their own life from the outside. An exhausted actor, repeating lines he no longer believes in. Wake up, work, smile at strangers, acquire what they order you to, follow unspoken rules, tolerate the noise. All of that exhausts you, doesn't it? But there's something worse. Pretending that you're fine. Acting like you still trust this daily scenario. All of us, at some point, silently wonder, have I lost my mind, or has the world gone insane? What if it were both? And what if the delusion were widespread and your restlessness was, in reality, the first sign of lucidity? This video is a refuge, a sacred corner for those who are tired of exhibiting contentment. You will now enter a conversation that goes not only through reason, but through the abyss between what you feel and what you were imposed upon to feel. We will walk together, without haste, through 5 chapters that intertwine like feverish dreams. And, in the end, you may not find all the answers, but you will find something rarer. The right questions. Have you noticed how the word normal became a kind of invisible cell? Waking up early, forcing cheerfulness, replying to messages you don't want to, accepting invitations with no purpose, laughing at unfunny jokes, following trends without essence, accumulating objects that fill nothing. That is the structure of normality, a daily ritual of self-neglect. And the most perverse thing is that when you start to doubt it, the world tries to convince you that the problem is you. You're isolating too much. You're thinking too much. You're becoming strange. But it's not madness. It's an excess of lucidity. It's the beginning of the collapse of the obvious. The philosopher Byung-Chul writes that we live in a performance culture where every individual is responsible for their own failure, where fatigue and anxiety are no longer seen as symptoms of a sick system, but as personal flaws. In this scenario, not being able to stand normal life is almost an act of resistance. Routine, which should be firm ground, has become quicksand. You wake up and already feel an inexplicable tiredness, not of the body, but of the soul. It's like inhabiting a ruined theater pretending the show continues, when the sets are slowly falling apart. Have you ever experienced that? Smiling in the crowd while silently screaming inside. That's the moment something breaks, not outside, but inside. And you realize, it's not that life is difficult, it's that it's unbearably superficial. Dostoevsky said that man needs suffering as much as he needs air. But the modern world tries to anesthetize everything. Silence, boredom, sadness, doubt. We live drunk on distractions. Normality became a rat race where those who stop to breathe are trampled by those who still believe in the finish line. Normal life is not neutral. It molds you. It steals your voice little by little. First, you start to accept small discomforts. Then, you start to deny your own feelings. And, in the end, you convince yourself that emptiness is just maturity. But listen carefully. Emptiness is not a sign of maturity. It is the choked cry of a domesticated soul. That feeling of being out of place, of not fitting in, is not weakness. It's a symptom of a sensitivity that survived. And that sensitivity is rare, it is dangerous, it is sacred. Nietzsche said that what doesn't make an impact doesn't deserve to be remembered. And what could be more impactful than realizing that your whole life was built on other people's expectations? The collapse of the obvious begins when you can no longer convince yourself that everything is fine. When parties bore you, conversations tire you. Meetings offend you with their empty formality. When you prefer the silence of a gray morning to the euphoria of a party. When you begin to prefer honest pain to plastic joy, it is at that point you perceive normality doesn't just tire, it's toxic. because it forces you to pretend, to adapt, to smile with your teeth while bleeding inside. And here is the most uncomfortable truth. Normality is sustained by a pact of pretense. Breaking with it is becoming a threat in the eyes of others. You move away, you go quiet, you observe, and slowly begin to reconstruct your reality from within, with other rhythms, other priorities, other truths. This is the beginning of detoxification, and like all withdrawal, it hurts. But there is beauty in the pain that comes from lucidity. There is sanctity in the discomfort of one who no longer wants to make a pact with the false. What you are feeling, as much as it seems like a collapse, may be a birth. Now there is something you need to understand. The most dangerous enemy is not outside, it is in your mind. That impulse that makes you explode, that anxiety that paralyzes you, that emotional attachment that weakens you inside, all that follows a pattern. And until you restructure the mental model that causes it, everything will repeat itself again and again. But there is a way to change that foundation, with cold logic, strategic awareness, and emotional retraining exercises. There is an angst that has no name, a kind of tiredness that is neither physical nor exactly emotional. It is more like a psychic exile. You walk among people, but you feel that something in you is no longer here, as if your body inhabits the now, but your soul has its bags packed. This is not depression, it is disagreement. You are in disagreement with the world, with the values, with the rhythms, with the masks, and that deep disagreement is often confused with weakness. But it is not weakness. It is a form of refined hearing. It's as if your spirit were catching a frequency that most people can no longer hear. Alan Watts, in one of his most moving meditations, said that the life they sell us is a great musical number, and that most people are too busy trying to get the choreography steps right to realize that they hate the music. Have you felt that? That feeling of being part of something you don't understand? Or worse, that you understand too much, and precisely because of that, you can't stand it. Common life revolves around goals, status, productivity, distraction. But you started to perceive the smell of the sham. You feel a knot in your chest when you see people running after goals that, deep down, fill nothing. You get tired just thinking about having to appear happy all the time. And then, you start to hear a calling, not with your ears, but with your chest. A calling that doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come from gurus, or motivational videos, or self-help books. It comes from the invisible. From that part of you that has no name, no gender, no social function, but that knows. It knows that the world screams too loudly to hide what it doesn't want to feel. It knows that the exhibited joy is, often, just a coat of varnish over a chronic sadness. It knows that there is something terribly wrong with this thing they tell us is life. That calling pulls you inward, and the more you try to fit in, the more it hurts. Because the calling is not to adapt. It is to wake up to what most people avoid looking at, that we live anesthetized, that we exchanged purpose for efficiency, that we confuse security with imprisonment, that we forgot the taste of the simple because we are addicted to excess. Simone Weil wrote that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity, but the modern world transformed attention into a commodity. They stole your capacity to be present, and now, when you try to recover it, you feel like a stranger, a foreigner in your own existence. But listen carefully. This is not a sign of maladjustment. It is the awakening. You are beginning to remember what is real. That feeling of not belonging is the opposite of alienation. It is your spirit rejecting the superficial, yearning for depth, silence, something that cannot be bought, published, or measured. You miss unhurried conversations, small but true gestures. Places where you can simply exist without having to prove anything. This is not spiritual weakness. It is a type of nostalgia for yourself. And do not be surprised if, in seeking that, you start to move away. It is not isolation, it is retreat. It is the chrysalis moment, the cocoon where the ego dissolves and something truer begins to emerge. But this process is solitary. Yes, because the world applauds the one who adapts, not the one who wakes up. They will call you weird, too sensitive, disconnected. Let them. Because in that silence, in that retreat, you begin to hear what truly matters. The voice that comes from the invisible, the voice that says, with a strange calm, you are on the right path. Even if everything around you says the opposite. Sartre said that hell is other people. But sometimes, hell is being among others and feeling that you have lost contact with yourself. Heaven may be that reconnection, silent, discreet, invisible, but absolutely real. And it is that calling, that nameless nostalgia, that is trying to remind you, you no longer belong here in the same way, because you are beginning to belong to yourself. There are days when everything seems to work, and yet nothing makes sense. You completed all the tasks, paid the bills, answered messages, did what was expected of you, and in the end, you only felt a frozen silence, like someone who reaches the top of a ladder and finds no door. That's where the most difficult malaise to explain begins. Life is working perfectly, but you feel like you are trapped in a simulation. And perhaps you are. Not a technological simulation as in sci-fi movies, but an emotional, cultural, spiritual simulation. A carefully choreographed theater where the most important thing is to seem, never to be. To smile, to produce, to continue, to publish, to answer, to thank, even if everything is falling apart inside. Alan Watts used to say that we confuse the map with the territory, the blueprint with the experience, the representation with real life. And that is why, even surrounded by comfort, technology, and access, you feel further away from yourself than ever before. The surface of life became a spectacle. But the spectacle tires, especially when the audience is also pretending to be entertained. Have you noticed how even conversations seem programmed? As if everyone were repeating ready-made phrases, copied opinions, generic outrage. It is a game of mirrors. Everyone reflects the other, but no one really looks at themselves. And so, we are being swallowed by a routine that revolves around productivity and distraction. No breaks, no presence, no depth. You wake up, check your phone, eat hastily, enter empty meetings, interact with absent people, drown in notifications, and you call that life. But at night, when everything goes silent, that uncomfortable thought comes, is this all there is? The philosopher Jean Baudrillard called this hyperreality, a state where the symbols of reality are worth more than reality. The photo of the food is worth more than the taste. The appearance of love is worth more than intimacy. The idea of success is worth more than inner peace. That is why people are exhausted, even without having done anything truly significant. Because living on the surface drains the soul, and a drained soul becomes cynical. Cynical about love, about faith, about beauty, cynical about the very meaning of being alive. And then you begin to feel nostalgia for things you never lived. Slow conversations, long gazes, purposeful work, days without a screen, unhurried mornings. And you perceive that the modern routine was not made for human beings, but for cogs. You were not born to be efficient, you were born to be whole. But the simulation does not want whole people. It prefers pieces, fragments, avatars, people who obey without asking, who consume without thinking, who repeat without feeling. That is why when you start to question, to withdraw, to seek silence, the system reacts. It starts to call you lazy, unmotivated, disconnected. But deep down, you are not disconnected. You are just trying to reconnect with something the world forgot. That is where the true tiredness begins, not the physical, but the existential. The one that comes from the excess of stimulation and the lack of meaning. It is like being full and hungry at the same time. And this is not just about you. It is about a collective collapse, a collapse of meaning, the price of living in a world where everything is visible, but almost nothing is true, but there is still a way out. Not easy, Not quick, but possible. It begins when you decide to let go of the script, when you stop acting, when you allow yourself not to know, not to want, not to comply. In that space of rupture, something new begins to breathe. An unlived life, a nameless desire, a thirst that no routine can quench. And perhaps that is what you are feeling now. It is not tiredness of the world, it is thirst for the real. There is a moment when the noise becomes unbearable. I am not just talking about physical noise, cars, notifications, hurried voices, but that subtler, more intimate noise, the noise of invisible demands, of accelerated thoughts, of the guilt of not being useful all the time. And it is in that restorative silence that the soul's oldest desire is born, to be quiet, but not an empty silence. It is a fertile silence, full of presence, like that of the forest before the rain, or that of a wordless dawn between two bodies that love each other without needing to explain. Perhaps that is why you feel such a strong urge to get away, to be in the woods, to take off your shoes and step on the damp earth, to drink coffee slowly as the sun rises, to listen to the song of a bird and, for the first time, not try to interpret it, just listen to it. That is not escape, it is return. The modern soul is not tired of doing things, it is exhausted from doing without purpose. And that is why nature begins to call, with its language without words, with its cadence which rushes for nothing. The tree does not try to prove it is useful. The flower does not rush to open. And yet, everything fulfills a purpose that escapes control, but not harmony. You feel that calling, don't you? To turn off the phone, to disappear for a few days, to listen to your own thoughts and then go beyond them, to finally feel what you feel, without intermediaries, without filters, without acting. This is where silence becomes a cure, because it brings you back to yourself. Thomas Merton said that contemplation is the answer to the deepest question of the human soul: how to live. And contemplation is only born in silence, in not doing, in not having, in simple being. But that seems absurd in a world where a person's value is measured by their productivity. And that is why silence is frightening, because in it there are no applause, no likes, no goals. There is just you, naked, complete, exposed to what has always been there, but that the noise hid. In silence, you realize that much of what you believed was necessary was just noise. The new clothes, the opinions of others, the haste, the fear of losing something. All that begins to crumble before the pure presence of a true instant. And it is in that space that God whispers, not in the scandal of exhibitionist religion, but in the subtle detail of existence. In the steam of the tea rising slowly, in the smell of the earth after the rain, in the embrace that needs no words, you begin to understand that presence. Reality is not something you seek outside. It is what happens when you allow yourself to inhabit your own body again, and then the world slows down. Time dilates. You breathe deeper. Anxiety begins to dissolve. Not because something changed outside, but because, for the first time in a long time, you are here, complete. Many are taking this silent path now, exchanging excess for essence, noise for listening, the crowd for communion, not with everyone, but with the few who look at you with clean eyes. That is why small rituals become sacred. Lighting a candle, reading a psalm, walking among trees, praying before sleeping. These gestures are not trivial, they are anchors. They are ways to remember every day that you are not here just to function. You are here to feel, to be, to witness the miracle of being alive, even when everything seems broken. And perhaps that is what your soul is looking for. Not answers or certainties or guarantees, but the courage to stop running, to be still, and to trust that even in chaos, there is beauty in the simple fact of breathing. Perhaps you are exactly at that point, in the middle of the road, neither gone nor completely here, It is like crossing a bridge at night without knowing what is on the other side. You feel you cannot go back, but you also do not have firm ground to step on. This is the strangest space of the journey, the in-between. It is here that you no longer recognize yourself in the clothes you wore, in the conversations you had, in the desires that moved you, but you still know who you are becoming. Do not be alarmed. This malaise is a sign of transition, not of failure. You are living the mourning of a life that no longer fits you, and that hurts, like every goodbye. Even when we say goodbye to a prison, we still weep because the prison was familiar and the new is not. Alan Watts said that life is like a dance, and not a path to a final destination. But who taught us to dance with the void? With uncertainty? With that feeling of floating between two worlds that do not touch? And yet, it is here, in that void between worlds, that you begin to hear something new, a voice that does not shout. It does not impose itself, but it is there, like a breeze, like an ancient echo that says, "You are exactly where you should be." The truth is that the old world is dying. You feel it, in artificial relationships, in the culture that normalizes the superficial, in the sterilized spirituality that distances more than it brings closer, in the fake smiles, in the prefabricated speeches, in the haste that overrides presence. That world is collapsing, and trying to adapt to it is like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. But that does not mean the new world has already been born. It is still fragile. It is being gestated in silences, in real encounters, in small rituals invisible to the eyes of the market. It is emerging where there is truth, where there is listening, where there is pause, and in that place you have a mission. It is not to fix the old world, nor to try to rush the new one, but to keep the flame lit. Keep your heart open, even when it hurts. Keep the sensitivity alive, even when the world seems insensitive. Keep the faith, not as certainty, but as the courage to remain. Yes, there will be solitude, but that solitude is also sacred. It is in it that you meet who you really are, and not who the world expected you to be. Yes, there will be doubts, but as Rainer Maria Rilke said, live the questions now. Perhaps, gradually, without noticing it, you will live along with the answer. You are not here by accident. This malaise that burns in your chest is not a curse. It is a compass. While the world screams, continue to whisper. While everything rushes, continue slowly. While many harden, keep your chest vulnerable. Because, in the end, when the old world finally dies, what will remain is what was always true. Real love, living presence, the awake soul. And you, yes, you will be like a lit candle in the middle of darkness, not to illuminate everything, but to show that the light still exists. Perhaps you still do not have all the answers. Maybe you do not even know exactly what you are looking for, but one thing is clear. You can no longer stand to pretend that everything is fine in a world where everything is collapsing inside. And that is a rare gift. Because most people are still asleep with their eyes open, smiling with a dead soul, running without knowing why. You stopped. You questioned. You started to hear the discomfort that lives in the bottom of your chest. And that discomfort, no matter how much it hurts, is the only bridge to something real. What you are feeling is not a defect. It is alignment. It is sensitivity in a world that cultivates anesthesia. It is awareness in a culture that venerates distraction. You are between two worlds, and that requires courage. Courage to keep loving. Courage to slow down when everything around screams for speed. Courage to keep the soul open, even when the body asks for protection. So, the next time you feel like you do not belong in this world, remember, maybe it's because you are being called to help create another. I remember a night when I sat on the floor of my room. Lights off, only a candle lit, and a silence so dense it felt like time had stopped. It was after an ordinary day, one of those where life seems to work, but you feel like you are falling apart inside. I looked at the candle and asked myself, is this all there is? Waking up, producing, smiling, and repeating until death. It was that night, in that desperate calm, that something in me began to change. It was not a miraculous event. It was more or less like a whisper, a memory that I was still there, that my soul was still breathing, even under the rubble of normality. And if you are here with me now, listening to this, reading this, feeling this, it is because, perhaps, that same flame that almost went out in me also burns inside you, fragile, but alive. Thank you for allowing this dialogue to exist. Thank you for not having given up on feeling. Thank you for not having turned into stone. This channel, this space, this voice, only exist because you still believe there is something beyond the surface. Now, if you made it to this point, you have two options. Either you close the video and return to the cycle of daily life, pretending that none of this happened, or you subscribe, leave your comment, and share with someone who, like you, is flirting with lucidity at 3 in the morning. And it's not for the algorithm, it's for relief. Who knows? Maybe your words will save the day of someone who is at the bottom of the well, not knowing that the bottom, sometimes, is the best place to hear the calling from above. By the way, there are 2 videos appearing here on the side, right now. Do not click if you only want a distraction. They are not light. One of them addresses something you feel, but never had the courage to name. The other may unsettle you, but in a good way. Select with care. Lucidity demands its price, but sometimes it is the only path still worth taking.